Good afternoon. Committee meetings. Sorry, what did I say? Oh, sorry. Good afternoon, committee members. Merci. I open the meeting. We are resuming meeting number 34 of the Standing Committee on Human Resources, Skills, Social Development, and Status of Persons with Disabilities. Today's meeting has taken place in a hybrid format pursuant to standing orders. Members are attending in person and remotely using the Zoom application. And as we have no witnesses online and all members are in the House, yes. Before I begin, again, I remind all members, and when we resume, we'll be resuming where we stopped with Ms. Fancy. When the meeting was suspended, she had the floor. So before I begin, I simply want to remind members to select the channel that gives them the official language that they wish to participate in. If there is an issue with translation, please get my attention, and we will suspend while it is being corrected. Again, as you are aware, direct all questions through I, the chair. As I indicated, when the meeting was suspended, we were debating the motion from Madame LaRouche, which was amended by Ms. Falk. The debate was on the amendment, and at that we will return to the speaker who had the floor. Ms. Fancy, you had the floor. I'll take a note.
Thank you very much. And through you, Chair, I'd love to start today by grounding this discussion in something that's very simple, but it's also very important, the work that we do here and the responsibility that we care when we sit around this table. So I know we're here initially regarding the motion from my colleague, Ms. LaRouche, that the Standing Committee on Human Resources, Skills and Social Development and the Status of Persons with Disabilities request that the Department of Employment and Families, the Department of Government Transformation, Public Works and Procurement, as well as the Privy Council Office, as well as the Prime Minister's Office, provide to the clerk of the committee within 30 days of the adoption of this motion all reports, correspondence, emails, and documents that are related to the management of the benefits delivery modernization since January 1st of 2017, and that the departments and offices responsible for producing the documents may apply redactions in accordance with the legal obligations set out to the Privacy Act and the Access of Information Act. So that it was the initial motion that we received from March, we're not even into May yet, but received on Thursday, March 26th. Later we moved on and had motion for amendments on the Standing Committee of Human Resources. So these are the amendments that our colleagues from across the way have proposed, that the Standing Committee on Human Resources, Skills and Social Development and the Status of Persons with Disabilities. There's quite a bit redacted from the initial motion. Then goes on to order the production of documents related to the Benefit Delivery Modernization Initiative, including the Curum platform and the Department of Employment and Social Development and the Department of Government Transformation, Public Services and Procurement Council, the Privy Council, and the Prime Minister's Office too. So I'd like to first take a moment and say I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different offices or departments that they're wanting documents related to. And then this is the list of all of these departments and offices. They will provide to the clerk of the committee within 30 days of the adoption of this motion the following: 1, 2, 3, 4. There are 5 different the followings as part of each of those departments. All internal audits, evaluations, and risk assessments related to the Benefits Delivery Modernization, or BDM, since January 1st of 2027. So that's similar to the initial motion, but then goes on to ask for all briefing notes, memoranda, and decision documents prepared for ministers and senior officials concerning the Benefits Delivery Modernization, or BDM, initiative, or the Curum platform. Also seeking all emails and electronic communications that relate to the system performance issues, delays or backlogs in benefit delivery, cost overruns or project risks, and decisions regarding the Curum platform and the Benefits Delivery Modernization, or BDM, implementation. It also seeks all contracts related to Curum platform and associated systems. And then finally, the last subsection here, E, the performance reports and data summaries tracking processing times, backlogs, error rates, system outages, and instances of incorrect benefit payments, including overpayments and subsequent recovery actions or clawbacks. So, ladies and gentlemen, I've just finally, in the first 7 minutes of this meeting, just read the motion and amendments to the motion that we're looking at in terms of, I believe it was 6 different ministries and 5 different subsections with many other different types of briefing notes and et cetera that as being they're requiring or that they want in regarding the Curum software. So when we're here around this table, we are entrusted with 2 things. First thing, to conduct oversight in a responsible, measured, and effective way. I think we can all agree on that. Second, to advance legislation. So legislation that Canadians are watching, Canadians are waiting on, and that Canadians expect us to study with care. And right now, we're kind of struggling to do either one, because before us is this motion, almost 2 pages at length, in its current form, that's pulling us away from both of those responsibilities that I just mentioned, right? Conducting oversight and responsibleness in an effective way, and to advance this legislation. So before us, we have a motion in its current, it's pulling us away from the responsibilities. So let me start today with the impact that we're already seeing. So last Thursday, as we know, this committee was scheduled to hear from witnesses on Bill C-20, which is implementation of Build Canada Homes Act through our Housing and Infrastructure Ministry.
Clearly state
I'm
your
not
point
hearing
for
relevance. It's talking about housing. That's not what the amendment or the motion on the floor is.
I would ask Ms. Fancy to...
On that same point of order, Chair? On that same point of order of relevance, yes, if that's okay. I think that Ms. Fancy is getting to a point. I think that we should allow her and indulge her the ability to lay out where we need to go by making sure that the context of where she's coming from is relevant.
Sorry, Chair. I'll just note the precedent that you've had on this in the past. There has not been a grace to allow the context, so I would just ask that the same is being applied into this situation.
Thank you. Ms. Fancy, you have the floor, and stay relevant to the amendment to the motion that is being discussed.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. Was only discussing in terms of what we were trying to pass along, furthering to my point earlier on how do we further legislation. So sometimes when we have witnesses that come here, they fly in and they're preparing documents themselves and preparing their briefing notes and whatnot. Sometimes it's very frustrating as committee members when, and probably into witnesses as well, we want a respectful nature. So that's what I was referring to. Mr. Chair, in that. So basically we canceled last week due to this motion and discussion regarding it, not because it's in an emergency, but because of a technical issue. because we're consumed by procedural debate right now within this motion. And that really matters because it matters for the credibility of this committee as a whole. It matters for the integrity within the process in committee, and it also matters for the message that we're sending to Canadians about how seriously we're taking our work. So when those witnesses take time to appear
Monsieur le Président.
before us,
Point of order, Chair.
Clearly state your point of order.
Monsieur le Président,
Mr. Chair, my colleague seems to be saying that we're not doing our job. We're not here to lose time. We're really here to study this motion and the amendments. I don't know why.
It's really a point of debate and not really a point of order.
I
je sais
have
pas,
recognized
je sais
the
pas pourquoi elle
point
insinue
of
qu'on est ici
order
pour perdre
from
notre...
I don't know why she's insinuating that we're here to lose time.
Et d'ailleurs, j'ai levé la main pour pouvoir parler.
And I put my hand up to be able to speak, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. The next, any further points of order, I will insist that you clearly reference the point of order. That was outside of that. Ms. Fancy, you have the floor.
yeah, just furthering what my colleague had mentioned in terms of, that's not really how a committee should function, and I'm agreeing with him on that point of order. So let's turn to the motion itself then. So what this motion is actually looking for is the production of literally millions of pages of documents across multiple departments, millions of pages. So it's not a real targeted request. It's not a real scoped request. It's a request of magnitude that is, quite frankly, pretty unprecedented within this committee. So when we're looking at some of these motions and trying to find out what the actual scope of what they're looking for, you can't just say, I just want every single click of a keyboard that's happened, and I want it all in a box so that we can peruse through that. Even though, as we've heard multiple times during question period, our minister had been asked this and gave a coherent and transparent answer saying that, that's also up for debate, but if I didn't say that, then you'd point of order me for not saying that. So no, the minister has already said, we have a 60-year-old program that we're trying to onboard. We have a couple of million seniors here, and I believe altogether there was a little under 30,000 that hadn't been onboarded due to paper that we're trying to that weren't completely onboarded. And the minister said to us, if there are any MP that have seniors right now that had missed payments, to please contact the MP, their constituency office, and then also she's made note of saying, if there's any seniors out there that have not received payments, to please contact her ministry herself. So when you have a system that had been 60 years old and they're trying to onboard with technology, sometimes there are bumps along the way. She's been transparent with that within the department. And we're saying, that number keeps going down as we go to try to get the seniors their checks. So we don't need to speculate on that. Just this past week, a similar motion was also introduced publicly to the Public Accounts Committee. And members were immediately had raised concerns. So I think they're still debating those motions as well, because the scale of that request, once again, was also vast. That cannot be implemented as written. So I think that this should give us pause, because the same issues that are going on there are also applying here, that producing millions of pages of documents will cost millions of dollars to produce. And that's not an abstract estimate. That is an operational reality of what's being asked within this motion. So, if you require teams of public servants to comb through some of these enormous volumes of material that we have almost a 2-page motion here with all of the different types of information platforms, electronic communications, risk assessments. So if you're requiring all of these teams to comb through these enormous amount of materials, Chair, like emails, briefing notes, technical reports, contract files, internal correspondence, that's just the beginning of what this could be. Each document would need to then be reviewed line by line for privacy, because then there's the section about the redacted pieces for privacy. So line by line for privacy, or for legal compliance, for confidentiality, and for national security considerations. So not only are we having literally millions of files potentially across 6 different departments, there's 5 different types of documents within each of those departments, and then they have to all go through line by line redaction for the privacy, legal compliance, confidentiality before they'd be able to turn over. And how long do you think that would take? Well, within this motion, they're saying 30 days. So then it needs to be processed. Then, on top of all of that, it then needs to be translated, because we're a bilingual nation. Then it would be compiled, then delivered. So you can see how many times I've said then. This is not a matter of putting files. It's not a matter of kind of taking the file or the box off the shelf. This is a months and months long, potentially year-long undertaking involving significant human and financial resources. And yet, the motion here poses this timeline of 30 days that does not reflect the reality of what they're actually requiring. I feel like this is simply not feasible for our current departments, or fair for our public servants who have other stuff that they need to attend to, like onboarding some of those seniors that did fall through the cracks as they were translating into that new system. So I think that it's really important that we clearly say that because these expectations matter, and when we set the expectations that cannot be met, we're not strengthening accountability, we're actually undermining it. So now I'd like to talk about the actual impact with the public service on a motion like this. So every hour, think about this, every hour that's spent compiling documents is an hour spent not delivering services that the Canadians they're relying on. So it's not really rhetorical, it's literal. So the public servants who would be tasked with fulfilling this massive request of documents and motions are the ones who process the claims. They also are the ones that are administering this program. They are also responding to inquiries, ensuring that the Canadians receive these services that they depend on. And when we divert those resources, there's also direct consequence. So the consequence is processing speeds slow down, the backlogs grow, responses take longer, and Canadians feel that. I'd also like to mention that throughout the whole process of our minister being asked about the Curum software and the onboarding, that she also provided 2 dates worth of technical briefs for anybody who wanted further information. None of this is in the motion at hand. So everybody, through you, Chair, at a time when Canadians expect efficiency, responsiveness, and timely service, this motion, I believe, would redirect significant capacity away from the public servant's normal job description and away from priorities and towards a more administrative exercise of an extraordinarily large scale. So the question that we need to ask ourselves around this, everybody, is, do we think that this is the best use of public resources? Is there do you think that this is the most effective way to achieve an oversight that's already been discussed, problem and pathways for remedy, and opportunities for people to learn about how and why it happened? Or are we starting to create a burden that outweighs the benefit? Because oversight is important, absolutely. So as a committee, we have the right to request information, yes. That's a fundamental role, it happens. But that right also comes with responsibility. I always used to tell my students, you sometimes choose you choose what you do and then you choose consequences, right? So it's very similar. When we're requesting information, it also comes with that responsibility. A responsibility that should be targeted, a responsibility that should be reasonable. So when I'm looking at targeted, this is through 6 different, there's no target to this. It's 6 different departments with 5 different interjurisdictional type of platforms. And I even see the amendments with C has 1, 2, 3, 4 other different types of those in electronic communications. So it's not targeted, and a responsibility that's reasonable. So reasonable is all of these untargeted asks for the documents for a department all wrapped up within 30 days is completely unreasonable. A responsibility as well to ensure that our requests are proportionate to the objective that we're trying to achieve. So in this case, it doesn't really have within this motion any objectives of what's trying to be achieved. This motion is, as it's written, it doesn't meet that type of standard that we have in our organizational sense here as a committee. Instead, what's happening right now is they're trying to set a precedent, right? A precedent for unlimited, unfocused document demands across government. And I don't really think that that's
Monsieur le Président. Est-ce que, Monsieur le Président, si je me permets...
Mr. Chair, if you'll allow me, could my colleagues please be more respectful and more patient, because we're talking about respect. We're talking about an IT system that cost $1.6 billion and up to $6.6 billion, $5 billion over budget.
We're debating an amendment to a motion, and Ms. Fancy has the floor. That is not a point of order, Monsieur Lefebvre. Ms. Fancy.
Thank you very much. Through you, Chair. So in terms of a precedent then being set, and I can agree with my colleague too, like that there are some seriousness that's happening here within this Curum software, right? They're trying to onboard a program that was 60 years old where everything was paper. And unfortunately, as they were taking all of this paper information from millions of seniors and onboarding it on to a more digital platform, unfortunately, yes, there were some people that fell through the cracks. Under 30,000 people of the millions that had been onboarded. Our minister has very clearly stated, yes, we understand that there are people from the that kind of came through the cracks with this. Yes, this is why it happened, because this is what happens when you deal with millions of pages of paper, right? So this is what happens when we're onboarding millions of people at a time. They're saying reach out to your MP. If your OAS did not come through, if the onboarding didn't happen correctly for you, or the MP constituency office, reach out to the department, reach out to the minister. That's all been very transparent. So it's not a small thing, this type of precedent, because once this precedent then becomes established, it does not exist in isolation. It shapes some of the expectations that we have growing forward, not just within this committee, but within standing committees as a whole. It creates a model that can be replicated across those committees, across departments, and across different types of files. And the cumulative effect to all this, I would say, is quite significant. It would strain public service capacity. We always say our public servants right now are already at capacity or working beyond capacity. So asks such as this, they take them, crossing that organizational boundary of what their actual job description is, to suffice something that we've already clearly been transparent about and trying to fix. Right? Sometimes when you know things went a little bit wrong, you become transparent, you clean it up, and you let people know this is what happened, this is what we're doing. So it diverts across the resources, across all these 6 different departments. It would fundamentally alter how the departments operate, shifting focus from delivering results to managing document production, and I don't feel that that is a reasonable or a responsible oversight, Mr. Chair. I also think that it's not sustainable. And I don't really think that that's what Canadians expect from us. I'd also like to address, Mr. Chair, something that's also often overlooked in these types of conversations or discussion, and that's the question of whether information is already being provided So like I had said before, when all of this happened, our minister had 2 days of technical briefings that members were allowed to go to discuss this and why it is happening. So because when we permiss underlying a motion like this, it seems to be that there's also a lack of transparency. But in this case, there has been no lack of transparency. That is not something that's borne out by facts. So Minister Hajdu has appeared before this committee. Minister Lightbound has also appeared before this committee. Officials from both offices have also appeared through this committee. Officials have been provided technical briefings.
This is just repetitive. We're hearing the same things over and over and over again. There's no new points that are being made. You did that in the last meeting as well. So we're just not hearing new points to this debate. It's just regurgitation of the same points. So I would suggest we move on the speaking list, please.
Thank you, Ms. Falk. I'm chairing the meeting. Ms. Fancy, you have the floor. You're speaking to the amendment.
I'd like to thank my colleague from across the way in allowing me to get a water break. Thank you. So in terms of all of the ministers that have already been here and spoken to this committee, they've also provided costing information. They've also responded to requests from members, including detailed follow-ups on contracts and program implementation. There has been engagement. There has been responsiveness. There has been transparency. So the issue before is not whether information is being shared. There's no cover-up here. The issue is we are going to adopt a motion that goes far beyond any targeted oversight and is now into something that's so broad, costly, and unrealistic to what we're actually trying to do here that it disrupts both public service delivery and our own legislative work. As we remember, I think we have 12 different motions that are kind of on the docket within our agenda. So that now brings me back to, you know, when we have an already set agenda with people like our witnesses that had come, and they spend the hours in the briefing, and then they come here, and then over half of them didn't get to speak because we're talking about a production of papers that falls under a completely different purview, a completely different ministry. That's, you know, testimony then gets delayed. Our progress is paused, and, you know, the Canadians are expecting us to be doing our jobs and furthering some of these reports that have already been adopted when we were working very well together. So they also expect us, Mr. Chair, to ask for questions. They expect to have this legislation moved forward. Instead, I feel right now within this 2-page motion document, I don't know about you all, but I feel kind of stuck. And our colleagues, that is our choice right now. Our choice right now is about our priorities of things that we've already been set upon. Our choice is about how we use our time as a committee, and it's a choice about how we signal what matters.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Well, then, Mr. President.
Another white try.
Ms. Fancy, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Chair, and through you. So this motion in its current form would push us, I believe, even further in the wrong direction into what I believe we're trying to achieve here. So I'd like to be very clear that I don't believe that this is even an argument about transparency or an argument in regards to accountability. I think that this might be an argument for both properly, for doing both responsibility, for doing it in a way that actually serves Canadians. because the Canadians here that we're here to represent do not benefit from motions that cannot be implemented. There's no implementation here. It's a fact and find search mission to something that's already been transparent, given a pathway, having people be able to come in and find out, what's going on with this new software. So Canadians in this way, they're not benefiting from any service delivery. We don't benefit, I believe, especially as a committee, with this type of stalled legislation. And what would people benefit by in this committee if we're not focused, effective, and kind of grounded in the reality or scope of what this motion represents? I also believe that this is a committee, we're the human committee, right? A committee that respects its witnesses when they're called. A committee, I believe, we have here that respects public resources wisely, a committee that advances legislative mandates, and it's a committee, I believe, that we have here that conducts oversight in a way that's targeted, proportionate, and also meaningful. This is the standard I think that we should all be aiming for, a standard that Canadians expect, and that it's a standard that this motion, as written, it does not meet. So for all of these reasons, the cost, unrealistic timeline, the strain on the public service capacity, the precedent that something like this sets, the transparency that's already been provided, and the direction disruption to our work on Bill C-20, I cannot support this motion in its current form, Mr. Chair, but I feel also more importantly that I would urge colleagues to reflect on what we want from this committee. Do we want a committee that is consumed by motions of this scale at the expense of legislative work? Or do we want a committee that is focused, disciplined, and effective in delivering for Canadians? And I believe that that's the choice amongst us right now. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I do have a lengthy speaking order.
Appel au règlement, Monsieur le Président.
Pardon?
Point of order, Chair. I would like to ask members, please, to remain respectful.
Monsieur Joseph, that is not a point of order. Monsieur Lefebvre. Lefebvre? Oui. À vous la parole.
Mr. Lefebvre, you have the floor. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. First off, we're talking about respect with the colleagues here. Mr. Chair, that is the most important value for me in my life and for many years. And I give conferences to young people who drop out, and I put the word respect on the whiteboard. If you respect people, people will respect you, so it's reciprocal. Now, today we're here for what purpose, Mr. Chair? We have the biggest fiscal scandal of the history of this country, a project that went from $1.6 billion to $6.6 billion. So $5 billion over budget. And our colleague spoke about respect, our role. Well, the MP Fancy was saying that it's moving us further away from our responsibilities. Mr. Chair, what's our responsibility? Our first role is to legislate, and our role is to assure the sound management of the money of Canadians that send us here. That is the respect that we owe to Canadians. And the file that we are talking about here, the $5 billion over cost situation, well, it's civil servants themselves who are telling us that it's simply not working. And we're asking for thousands of pages of information, and MP Fancy is saying it's irresponsible and it will cost a couple $1 million. We're talking about $5 billion of budget overshoot, and what's irresponsible is not to shed light on the biggest fiscal scandal of this country's history. That would be irresponsible, not to shed light on what's happened. So what we need to do is to have answers to our questions, which is exactly what's in the motion, because someone approved. Someone said yes to a $5 billion budget overshoot. someone saw that the software was not working, wasn't yielding the expected results, but they kept pushing forward. This is our role as lawmakers. That is why we have been elected by Canadians who expect results. Mr. Chair, I always tell people that it's a big privilege to be their ears and eyes here in Ottawa. So that should be the guiding principle for all of us, to be the eyes and ears of our citizens. And when you have a scandal such as this one, where $5 billion overshoot happened in this project, and if you want to be serious and do our work, do our job, and be the eyes and ears of our citizens, well, we have to ask for some answers. It's our responsibility. It's our duty as lawmakers. We asked for Minister Hajdu and Minister Lightbound to provide answers. Do you know how long that took, Mr. Chair? Well, we only got 1 hour with them, 30 minutes per minister. They came here and they only spent 30 minutes with us each. Do you think that that was enough time for us to be able to ask the questions to get the answers we're looking for, Mr. Chair? Of course not. We're talking about $5 billion over budget, and I have 30 minutes. 30 minutes for all the colleagues here to ask questions to the minister, not just myself, for instance. That's just ridiculous. It's just not respectful towards lawmakers to just give us 30 minutes to answer questions about a situation where the cost overrun was $5 billion. That is the respect that the Liberal government is showing the democratically elected lawmakers from all of our constituencies and different ridings to represent Canadians who sent us here. People are having to work hard to earn their paycheck, and they give almost half of what they make to us here in Ottawa, and there's a $5 billion over budget situation, and we only get 30 minutes to ask questions. Well, what would be irresponsible, Mr. Chair, would be not to ask these questions. I really wanted to be here because I'm a member of the Finance Committee, but I simply find this whole thing unacceptable. There's an article in the Journal de Montréal today talking about the elderly having problems making ends meet, having difficulty paying for their groceries, and we have millions of elderly people, unfortunately, who haven't received their benefits or who have had problems with their benefits because of this software not functioning properly. They are having to wait 8 to 9 months to get their money. Some of these elderly people are in financial distress, and that's the situation that's in front of 86 million elderly people, and we simply cannot accept this situation, Mr. Chair. I will continue to fight for the elderly, for Canadians who work hard and who have their trust in us, and who are having to pay a significant chunk of what they make so that we get here and we are able to offer services to Canadians in exchange for the sums they give us, essentially, every single month. And we have to be efficient and responsible in managing these funds. But in this case, it's not sound management of the funds or efficient or responsible management of the funds. So we have to have answers. We will hopefully get these answers, and Mr. Chair, I will continue to fight so that we get these answers, because there's someone somewhere who accepted this cost overrun of $5 billion. Someone accepted the fact that this piece of software doesn't work, and I extended my hand out to the minister to go out and meet the employees on the field who are using the Curam system. They are using the system day in, day out, and I said to the minister, let's go together. I don't use this IT system. The minister doesn't use it either. Can we please go and meet and talk to these people who use these systems to understand what the problems are, what the challenges are that they're facing day to day, so that we can find a solution. Mr. Chair, we owe it to ourselves to find answers. On this side of the House, we'll continue the work. And when our colleague was speaking about respect, what would be lacking the respect is not doing the work that we're doing right now. We have to find these answers. We have to show respect to Canadians who are also asking some questions. Where did this $5 billion go? What happened? What's the chain of decisions that occurred? Because there's a number of measures here in this motion, and we will make sure to get the necessary answers, to shed light on this, and to get the answers that are necessary. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Lefebvre. And now, Mr. Généreux, you have the floor. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you for having us here at committee today. Just to go back, it's going to be 2 years soon enough that I've been a federal MP, and 2009, 2011, just as a reference to my colleague who was talking about a motion, a page and a half with amendments. When Conservatives were in power in 2009, 2011, to 13, I wasn't here, unfortunately, but motions such as this was not something rare. It was the reality. It's the reality of being in opposition and, of course, asking the government to do some serious analysis when there are issues with new IT systems or new legislation. So the government should take stock of the situation. $1.7 billion is initially set out for the revision of the system. It was quite low. Now we're at $6.6 billion, and now the system isn't even fully implemented A to Z yet. There are other stages which will end up costing possibly many billions. So asking via a motion, in this case amended by the Conservatives, is completely normal. And it's completely normal also to do this when you have such a cost overrun. I don't know if ArriveCAN rings a bell, or the sponsorship scandal. These are things that have happened. And we had to carry out some analysis and studies to see how the money was spent. And as a responsible government, as you say you are, well, I don't know why you would have an issue with this motion. Of course, it will cost money if you want to be able to assess what happened. If there was no need for this motion, point of order, Mr. Chair, we are not talking about the amendment, we're talking about the motion.
Mr. Joseph, Monsieur Généreux is on the text of the amendment. Mr. Généreux, you have the floor.
Merci. Alors,
Thank you. Well, sincerely, it is the duty of all members of this committee. Ms. Fancy was talking about the role of a committee. Well, obviously, the role of a committee is to carry out analyses and to hold the government accountable. It's part of the job. It's part of the work that gets done here for all colleagues. And when we're talking about $5 billion cost overrun, well, I think it's clear that some analysis is due. We have to look into what happened with the implementation of the system. Now, I understand fully where my colleagues are coming from, and I'm trying to remain open to their arguments. They were telling us, well, we were on a paper-based system for millions of Canadians and doing the transfers from that system into the IT system. Well, we had in Quebec with the SAC situation, it cost $1.5 billion, so much lower than what we are dealing with here today. But our duty is to know, on behalf of all Canadians, what happened so that we can draw some lessons. So, Mr. Chair, I support 100% the amendment moved by my colleagues so that we can shed light on this important scandal. I think the word is appropriate in this case. It is scandalous to see a project that starts at $1.6 billion. Now we're at $6.6 billion, and it's not even done yet. So we have to shed light. Thank you very much.
Merci.
Thank you, Mr. Généreux. Ms. McKelvey.
You have the floor.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Merci pour la...
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the opportunity for being with you today. I am replacing Caroline Desrochers.
I was coming because we were going to talk about Build Canada Homes. So it's a little bit disappointing that we're stuck on a motion that calls for production of millions of pages of documents across multiple departments. And this isn't an exaggeration when you read through the motion. The scale of the request really is unprecedented.
Point of order, Mr. Chair. I feel very bad for Ms. McKelvey that she got the wrong impression about what was on the agenda. Could you clarify
Mr. Janis,
what
that's
was
not
on
a
the
point of order,
published
and you
agenda
know
that was sent around this morning?
Thank you, Mr. Janis. That is not a point of order. And you
No,
know
I'm just
that.
trying to be courteous to our
Thank
guest
you,
here.
Mr.
She
Janis.
said she was
I can
under.
clarify.
Janis?
Yeah, please.
Mr. Janis? We done?
I can clarify. I was expecting you to come for quite some time. I had this in my agenda long before the agenda changed. So I was really surprised, here we are talking about a motion with an unprecedented scale of request, and it mirrors a similar motion that was introduced at Public Accounts Committee last week. So members, there are still debating amendments because of the sheer volume and the complexity of what is involved. So I think when we have motions, we have to make sure that they're smart, that they are specific, that they are measurable, that they are achievable, that they are relevant, that they are time-bound. And frankly, I feel like we dealt with similar motions on Science Committee, and there were enormous document requests. And once we really looked into things and saw the breadth of what was being asked for, how many pages of documents, and importantly, what the cost was to translate, because it's very important that all this information is always available in both official languages. We ultimately changed our minds on that and had something very, very scoped instead, a motion that was much more smart, so to speak. And not only that, but in terms of time, the translation was going to literally take years. So producing the material that's being requested in this motion will cost millions of dollars. It is simply not feasible to complete within the time frame proposed, just 30 days. And expecting public servants to comb through millions of documents across multiple departments in a matter of weeks is just simply not realistic. These individuals are already working at full capacity to deliver services Canadians rely on every single day. So that brings me to impact. Every hour that's spent compiling documents is an hour that's not spent processing claims by the department, answering inquiries, or delivering timely services to Canadians at a time when Canadians expect efficiency. We see that. They're asking for that. And responsiveness. And this motion really diverts public servants away from their core responsibilities, and it slows down service delivery at a moment when we can at least afford to slow down. And so, while I do respect that committees have a right to request information, it's important that we look at the broader context of what those implications are. And the requests have to be targeted, and they have to be reasonable. And if adopted, this motion sets something that's really unprecedented. It's unfocused documents across government, likely needing, many, many thousands of hours of translation, and it's just not a sustainable or responsive approach to oversight. So coming back to where I was getting at the beginning, This is taking away from equally important work here on this committee as well. We should be working on Bill C-20, Build Canada Homes, and last Thursday, I know that this committee was unable to hear from witnesses who had taken time out of their day, some of them rearranging schedules, some of them traveling here to appear before us on the important C-20 legislation. And two of those stakeholders wrote to me personally and said how disappointed they were that they were unable to answer questions and to fully convey what was important to them in this important legislation of C-20 Build Canada Homes. And their testimony, it matters. Their perspectives matter. And we had to cancel because this committee was consumed by procedural wrangling related to this motion. And we owe it to those witnesses, we owe it to Canadians to stay focused on legislative work before us, to not go down these rabbit holes. And Bill C-20, Build Canada Homes, it's significant, and the committee has a responsibility to give that the attention it deserves. So continuing down this path of broad, unfocused document demands only delays that work further. Other committees have made that realization and backed off of things like this. And I want to acknowledge that we already have seen a lot of transparency demonstrated on this file. Minister Hadou, Minister Lightbound, officials from both offices had appeared. Officials provided technical briefings to critics. They supplied regional breakdowns and costing at the committee's request. There's already been substantial engagement, substantial openness. So given all of this, and importantly, the important work that I think we need to be doing on C-20 Build Canada Homes, coupled with the fact that this is not a smart motion. Again, it's not specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and the time that has been allotted to it is just simply not realistic. Given that, I really think that this will have a tremendous impact on service delivery by our public servants that are working for Canadians very, very busily. I'm very worried about the precedent that it sets, especially in terms of years. This could be years worth of translation, and for something that may not even achieve the outcome that people think it will. And it's a huge disruption to the important work for C-20 Build Canada Homes. So, that's why I am, not in support of this motion. I wish we were talking about Build Canada Homes today, but I think it's important that I speak today to how this will really be an ineffective use of, frankly, taxpayers' dollars to go down the road of this motion. We can use our time to be responsible, to be targeted, and to really focus more on the work that Canadians expect us to do. So thank you, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity to be here, and hopefully I will be back one day on Build Canada Homes and those important matters of housing and infrastructure, which I'm so privileged to get work on for Canadians.
Thank you.
Point of order, Chair, just while we have a break here.
Clearly state your point of order.
Yeah. Chair, my understanding of the process is that we have a proposed calendar, we have agendas that are put out, and I just want to encourage members, if they came here expecting one thing to be discussed that was never on the calendar or the agenda for today,
Thank you.
It never was.
Thank you, Mr. Janis.
Then maybe
Thank you,
members
Mr.
should
Janis.
consult that in advance.
That's not a point of order.
I just
Order.
think it's
Order.
helpful, Chair,
Order.
because Ms. McKelvey came here with
Order.
different expectations. So.
If I get interrupted again, we'll suspend. Madame Khalid? I'll make.
If that was nice, I wonder what the other part looks like. I appreciate it.
Again, members that bring back to the
Apologies.
relevant matters.
This brings back all kinds of good memories.
Is the amendment that's currently being debated. And so far, the debate has stayed to the text of the amendment. So I encourage both sides to stick with that. Madame Khalid, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and I really appreciate how rigidly you run this committee. May I give you my biggest compliments. Thank you very much for all members for including me in this committee today. And I know that Mr. Genuis had pointed out that we should stick to, and you, Chair, that the topic at hand, which is the amendment that is before us today. But I too will take, if with the indulgence of the committee, just 30 seconds to say that I wish that we could talk about gig workers and how this committee can help support their employment insurance rights and support them better as the nature of employment within our country is changing. But those are my 30 seconds. I'll get to the amendment now, and I hope that members across this table can appreciate. Look, many of us have been around here for a very long time. I've served on the Public Accounts Committee. I currently serve on the Government Operations Committee and also on the Status of Women Committee. I see how we can use House procedure and committee procedure to stall. And I don't think that that's what Canadians are looking for. So when I look at the text of this motion, of these amendments, we're good? You guys have had your laugh? Okay, great. So when I look at the text of this motion, what I'm seeing, based on the experience that I've had over these past 10 years as a parliamentarian, is not that any one of our opposition members are going to read these million documents, but they're willing to spend so much dollars to use our public service to obtain them, and then to translate them, and then to just stall the work of the amazing work that this committee does generally. And I think that we're beyond that. I think that we should be beyond that, because it ultimately, what is the objective here? What are we trying to achieve? I think ultimately, again, I sit on government operations. We're going through the comprehensive expenditure review. We're looking to see how public service spends their dollars and to see how we can find efficiencies and make sure that our democratic institutions, our parliamentary institution, is well maintained and is well supported, and that our Canadian taxpayer dollars are well respected while we're doing that. So for me, as I come in here and I look at what is being proposed here, I'm quite aghast, to be honest. I mean, my understanding is that the committee has already received briefings, been provided with the documentation that's been requested, and that officials are actually coming through to speak with committee members as well. And committee members have the privilege to be able to ask witnesses as they come forward for individual pieces of information or areas of interest that they have, and be able to receive that information specifically. So for me, when I see a motion like this, I'm thinking, well, why do you need all of these documents? And why do you need them within 30 days? Members across the way have been here just as long as I have, if not longer. They know exactly the limitations of the resources of the House. So when we're putting a limitation on the time frame and expanding the breadth of the documents that we expect to receive, while also maintaining and respecting that all of these documents need to translate it into both of our official languages, it really calls to question why. Our committees are tools to promote democracy, to promote the ability to not only provide oversight to what government is doing, but also to bring up new issues that Canadians raise with us in the areas that our committees are targeted towards, that we are mandated for. So when I see that we use committee resources to what objective, I'm not sure. I'm sure that we'll find out in a couple of weeks or months from the opposition. But why do we need to waste those couple of weeks and months? Why can we not talk about the issues of our generation right now, especially in this Committee of Human Resources, Skills and Development? It is unreal, to be honest. I mean, as I said, I've been through production orders in the past, and some of them have been successful, where we have had our House resources spend thousands of hours on translating documents that nobody really reads. And I think that that is an ultimate disrespect to the resources that we have available as members of Parliament. So for me, this motion, where it demands millions of pages with unrealistic timelines, it is an insult to our House resources. I think that we as parliamentarians can do better, and I think that we should do better. We are elected to lead by example. We are elected to put forth the issues that our constituents and that Canadians raise for us to represent them here in this place. And what we're doing with the valuable time that we have sitting on this table is debating whether or not millions of pages of documents can be produced within 30 days, translated, following all the House rules, etc. I think that we can definitely be better than that. The demand on public servants is really great. Not just now, and I remember especially during COVID days when we had very, very limited resources and there was a lot of shenanigans going on around the House. And the awesome people that support us in committees, that support us with the work that we do as parliamentarians, were left scrambling. You know, there were many instances where they had to go into therapy because of the toxicness of this place, because of the lack of resources, the lack of support for them. So I wonder again, coming back to the motion, what is the objective here? Why do we not care about our public servants and the work that they do? Why do we have to use them as a base in order to put forward our own political agenda, whatever that may be? It really doesn't make sense. And then the other piece of it is that when we take away resources,
COVID, I'm not hearing about anything about what's in the amendment to the motion.
Chair, if I may.
So the speaker is covering the context of the workload it would put on the public servant, so it is relevant. Ms. Khalid, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And that's exactly it. You know, when I'm giving all of these examples, I'm talking about what I've seen in the past. I'm talking about where we are standing today in this committee. We have stood here many, many times in the past in various different committees to no purpose, in my point of view. I mean, we're talking about trying to build an efficient and democratic place here. We're trying to talk about the respect for public servants and the work that they do. And I'm merely providing examples as to how I've seen this happen and not happen in the past. So, you know, as I was talking about to my next point about service delivery, you know, when we're talking about millions of pages of documents that need to be translated, and we're given such a short time, potentially, as as is written in this amendment, to do it, well, why are we taking away the resources from actual delivery of services to Canadians? These are resources, as we have established, as members across the way have also established, that are very, very necessary in order to provide Canadians the support that they deserve and the support that they expect. So why are we taking away these resources from providing actual service delivery to them when rather than actually, or sitting here and debating an amendment to a motion that is taking away those resources from that? So, Mr. Chair, I am quite perplexed. I had come here because I do vice chair two opposition-led committees. I'd come here with the hopes that I would have a nice, substantive, good committee where we can talk about the genuine issues that Canadians are really championing, whether it's cost of living, whether it is providing reforms to our employment insurance or working with the provinces to make sure that gig workers are provided the supports that they need. But instead, I find myself sitting here debating an amendment to a motion as to why we should not be wasting government resources to provide millions of pages of documents and use government resources to translate all of them, and then knowing that members across the way that are requesting them are actually not going to read those millions of pages. And then also knowing that we have, I'm not done.
Well, there's been a lot of talk about respect. And I mean, to imply what we would or would not do, I just find pretty disrespectful, because that's not the type of member of parliament that I am. I try to put my best forward. I try to prepare the documents we get. My office and me read them, so I take offense with that. And I would just ask that respect would be applied equally across the table. Chair.
Thank you. That was not a point of order, but it's...
a definite reminder, Chair. And
It is,
100%,
yes.
absolutely fair.
Sorry, excuse me. I would ask both sides to respect each other. You have the floor, Madame Khalid.
Thank you very much, Chair. And you're absolutely right. I should not be presumptuous to assume that members across the way that are requesting millions of pages of documents within 30 days are going to read those documents within 30 days also. But the point that I was trying to make is that when a committee has the opportunity to bring in witnesses, and my understanding is that witnesses are coming in, and be strategic and specific and more efficient about the types of documents that they're looking for from officials, then why would we want to do a blanket search and put our public service through such a hassle in order to, I'll just leave it at that, Mr. Chair. But I am hopeful that we can come to a resolution on this amendment, and I'm happy to speak with members across the way as well to see how we can find efficiencies and work together with the public service, with the committee members, all of them, and try to get to a collective objective that helps Canadians and that respects Canadian tax dollars as well. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Merci, Madame Khalid. Monsieur Joseph, à vous
Merci,
la
Monsieur le
parole,
Président.
monsieur.
Et avant de commencer,
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before I begin, I'd like to congratulate all my colleagues, Mr. Généreux, Ms. LaRouche, Mr. Genuis, who have been here for a long time. They have a lot of experience, but they've fallen into a trap by the bloc when they're saying that they're supporting the motion. Mr. Généreux seems to be falling in the trap. If you can address your comments to the chair.
Monsieur Joseph, à vous.
merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Chair. So, congratulations. You have a lot of experience, but unfortunately, you've fallen in their trap nonetheless. Mr. Genereux and Mr. Lefebvre, they talked about some numbers, but there was some wrong information. I was paying attention. Next time they speak to Canadians, maybe it is better if they had the correct information rather than the wrong information. It could be very dangerous. So I'm going to help them out a little bit. When it comes to...
Monsieur le Président, je peux...
Mr. Chair, I cannot let the Member of Parliament say that I misled Canadians. The numbers I refer to have been picked up by many national media outlets, and the member here is saying that I'm misleading Canadians. I ask him to withdraw.
Here, the term misled used in the House of Commons on a regular basis, as well as in committees. Members should be judicious on their choice of words, but I'm not here to lecture any of you. Mr. Joseph.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Chair. I will withdraw and apologize to my colleague. So let's talk about the numbers. In the Atlantic region, on the 26th of January 2026, there were about 3,000 claims, pending claims. On the 28th of February, there were about 1,800 in the Atlantic region. Now we're in April. We have about 1,300 in Quebec. Also very important for me. There were 11,500 claims. 28th of February 2026, there were about 9,000. Now we're in April. There is less. In Ontario, we had 34,500 or so. In February, as of the 28th of February, we had 24,400-ish. In Northwest Territories, we had 112. On the 28th of February 2026, there were 21,515. So there are other regions and provinces. I'm not going to list all of them or make up numbers to mislead. That is not one of my habits. So a lot of work has been done quickly. It's clear to see. For all to see, it's phenomenal work that's being done, and we should not take away resources from this effort. So this motion, which has no meaning, will cost a lot of money and resources. My colleagues talked about millions of pages, which of course will take a lot of resources and a lot of money, and civil servants are not robots, Mr. Chair. So, if you go back to the fundamentals, we're talking about old age security. Since the beginning of the year, different teams and from the department have been working hard to deal with all claims. And the work is, we're making progress. So on the 26th of February, there were about 3,800 claims in pending claims for the Atlantic region. But after about a month, there were only about 1,300 or so. Well, Mr. Chair, even though progress is being made, we will not stop until each and every one of these claims is taken care of. So these claims are mostly in paper form, and our teams are being solicited to help citizens. And I don't want to make a mistake here. So we're talking about payments made to individuals for the rest of their lives, so it's quite important.
Just relevance. I mean, that this is not what MP Joseph is saying is not what the amendment is. This isn't about claim numbers. I mean, we would like to see that information produced, but that has nothing to do with what the amendment is. And I will note, Chair, too, that I'm making a note of the latitude that you are giving members in this and the precedent that it's setting of going off of the topic at hand.
Thank you, Ms. Falk. I'm listening very intently and closely to both sides of the debate, and I will call somebody to relevancy if they stray away from the amendment and the amendment to the motion. Mr. Joseph's comments are specifically related to the statistics and the documents that led to the motion being introduced here. Mr. Joseph,
Merci, Monsieur.
vous la parole.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Chair. It was indeed the case. I was talking about the motion and our elderly, so I'll continue. So it's not time to take away resources from this effort to bring the situation back to normal. It's not really time for us to ask for the reproduction of millions and millions of pages of documents, which we may not even end up looking into, and maybe they will get just filed and somewhere and forgotten. Unless Ms. Falk has 15 people that she can dedicate to just going through this work.
Be respectful.
Please contain your comments to the amendment and without referencing committee members.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Chair. But I think we can say that millions of pages of documents, it's impossible for people to read. Now, the bloc is asking questions about this topic every single day in the House, and our government is answering every single time. So in order to make things clear for people watching at home, now, I was talking to a 70-year-old woman in my riding, and she was saying that she tuned in, heard the arguments of all the parties, and I think she was more in agreement with the arguments coming from our side, just as a bit of detail. So, if we are to go back to the wider context and the amendment by Ms. Falk to the motion by Ms. LaRouche, and maybe it's a good idea at this point to read so that people have a good understanding of what the situation is. So it reads that the Standing Committee on Human Resources, Skills and Social Development and the Status of Persons with Disabilities request that the Department of Employment and Families, the Department of Government Transformation, Public Works and Procurement, the Privy Council Office, as well as the Prime Minister's Office provide to the clerk of the committee within 30 days of the adoption of this motion all reports, correspondence, emails, and documents related to the management of the benefits delivery modernization since January 1st, 2017. And that the departments and the offices responsible for producing the documents apply redactions in accordance with the legal obligations set out in the Privacy Act and the Access to Information Act. Now, Mr. Chair, you know what people are interested in, especially if they are waiting for their OAS payments? Well, it's buying groceries and filling their fridge. They don't care about dedicating civil servants to go and hunt for thousands and millions pages of documents that the Conservatives will not end up reading anyways. Now, a lot of people talk to me. Do you know how many people reached out to me with regard to what we're talking about? Well, a single individual, a single lady. But in the House, when questions are being asked to the government on this, the minister or other colleagues are responding, well, I mean, talk to the people in your ridings, get their files, get their cases to us, and we'll look into those. But that doesn't seem to be happening a lot. So to date, we've had 0 such cases or feedback. So the Conservatives are looking to slow down the functioning of the Parliament by moving motions and amendments that don't have a lot to do with the substantial work that is before us. Now, we were talking about homelessness in Quebec and housing situation, and when the motion was moved, that was something that didn't sit well with me. Because when you have someone who travels from Quebec to Ottawa to talk to parliamentarians, I think we owe them respect.
Joseph, come back to the amendment. We're not on housing at the moment.
OK, je vais revenir, Monsieur le Président. OK, merci, Monsieur le Président.
Okay. Now, they are doing this to slow down the workings of the committee here. Mr. Chair, as the minister, as well as the MP for Thunder Bay, have been saying regularly during oral questions. Now, questions are being asked every single day on this topic, and our government is inviting members of the opposition to send to us the cases they have on people who have been impacted by this situation so that we can help them out. Well, to date, we have received 0 files. So I would like to once again offer this opportunity. So it's always a possibility for our colleagues on the other side to send these files to us. Now, Mr. Chair, I think action should follow the words. Now, they were saying, of course, it's something they end up saying quite often, if it's good for Quebec, we'll vote for. Now, this frustration, there seems to be a lot of it on the side of the leader of the opposition. And he was saying that he would fire the governor of the Bank of Canada when he was running for leadership. So I would like to invite people who are tuning in to go online and see what the situation is for themselves. Mr. Chair, I organized meetings with citizens and an individual was saying that they voted for Bloc with the exception of the last elections, and in the last elections they voted for the Prime Minister and the Liberal Party of Canada. And this person told me something, Mr. Chair, that the Bloc was
Relevance to the amendment before us, or I will have to move on. Referencing the last election is not
Monsieur le Président, je
relevant.
suis là-dedans.
D'accord.
Non, mais je parlais avec les aînés.
No, I was saying that I was talking to the elderly in my riding. It's normal that we listen to them, right?
Please, relevant to the amendment.
Ok, Monsieur le Président, pas de problème.
Okay, Mr. Chair. So we see, Mr. Chair, that this is an amendment that will eat up a lot of resources and delay the work that needs to be done. Because if I put myself in the shoes of an elderly individual who's waiting for their OAS payment, well, I wouldn't want to see the Conservatives trying to do something that would eat up a lot of the resources that need to go elsewhere. For instance, the payment of my OAS benefits. Now, in the House, they're asking questions on this all the time. In committee here, they're asking for documents, so many documents that it will end up costing millions, which will come out of the pockets of Canadians and Quebecers. So I put myself in the shoes of every single Quebecer that is tuning in today. That is not how I would want our money to be used in Ottawa, because here at this committee we're dealing with very important topics. People living with disabilities, experiencing homelessness. So we have to be careful with regard to the utilization of the resources of these committees, given that these are all very important topics. So the opposition can, of course, oppose and move motions in committee, but ideally, the motions would put Canadians and Quebecers at the heart of our discussions. So I am asking the opposition parties to put their egos to the side and think about Canadians, because this isn't what politics is about. We need to put ourselves to the side and really think about the people who have sent us here, the people in our constituencies. So I will stop at that point, Mr. Chair. Maybe others will want to take the floor. I could continue, but I'd like to stop at this point. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
See, Monsieur.
Thank you, Mr. Joseph. Ms. LaRouche, you have the floor. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll try to keep this short. Well, because we would like to see some documents, look into it, and then be done with it, and then move on to the study. Now, we have a report on youth employment, and at the block, we made it clear that we wanted to work with the government on that. So I'm not going to prolong this for no good end. We're just asking for some answers, and I'm not going to launch personal attacks like Mr. Joseph. Point of order, Mr. Chair. I have people in my riding as well.
Qui ne sont même pas sympathisants libéraux, mais je n'irai pas là. Je n'irai pas là. Je vais m'arrêter maintenant parce que je n'ai pas le goût de faire des attaques personnelles. J'arrête tout de suite, Monsieur le Président.
We're back in session. Madame Laroche, vous la parole.
You have the floor. So as I was saying, Mr. Chair, I should have taken the floor earlier, but I wanted to be respectful, let people speak, and I listened to their points of view. Maybe I should have taken the floor earlier with some personal attacks, but no, that's not what I chose to do. Instead, to come back to the motion. Now, when you're asking for numbers and some explanations on these pieces of software, these are not just toys of the government, and these have concrete impacts on people's lives. So I was elected in 2019, and one of the first people who came to my riding office was a young family with a young child, and a mother who started crying. And this woman used to be a federal employee, And because of Phoenix, she was not getting her benefits. And she had a baby, and she wanted to use her maternal leave. But that was not to be because money was not coming in. So software has concrete impact on people's lives. And I witnessed that firsthand with that specific case. And to date, there are people who are having Phoenix-related issues. During the pandemic, we had ArriveCAN and cost overruns, and that had an impact on psychological and even physical health of different people. So these are examples that show that these federal IT systems have impacts on the lives of Quebecers, Mr. Chair. I could also talk about the history of CURAM because it's very long. Of course, modernization was due with regard to the benefits delivery system, but there were red flags that had been put up for a long time. The Auditor General sounded the alarm 3 years ago that there would be significant cost overruns with CURAM. My colleague Nathalie Sinclair-Degagné at the Public Accounts Committee also sounded the alarm, saying that there would be problems for the elderly with CURAM, and then the AG said the same thing. No one listened. No one seemed too concerned. We had discussions during the prorogation in February 2025 on the same topic. We couldn't come to the House to talk about it because the Parliament had been prorogued before the elections. Unfortunate, because we didn't get the opportunity to speak about CURAM cases. Last year in June, civil servants sounded the alarm once again that there would be cost overruns as outlined by the AG. And civil servant unions started saying the same thing. There would be problems with the benefits, the payments. And our Liberal colleagues rose up to defend. And they didn't see the problem. So 1 out of 10 people are having problems with this software. When that is the case, you can't say that a piece of software has been successfully implemented. So with all this background, we wanted to see what was really happening with CURAM, but the government didn't move. And early 2026, media outlets started looking into CURAM. So years after the system first started to be implemented, years after the AG sounded the alarm, and a lot of time after, civil servants were saying that there would be problems with the benefits payments. And it took media outlets, especially in Quebec, to take an interest in this for us to finally come to this point. And I also would like to say, well, of course, the Bloc Québécois was at the forefront of talking about this because we listened to civil servants, to the AG, to the elderly who were having issues, but we were not the only ones. And saying that the Conservatives are following this file without really fully understanding why, well, Mr. Lefebvre has shown that he has cases in his riding and the elderly people who are waiting for payments due to CURAM issues. We asked questions in the House, and we started getting answers from the minister who said there were some cases only. When we started asking questions to the minister late February, when we came back into the House, we started asking these questions. Then it went from some cases to 0.something% of the cases. So when the colleagues are talking about clear answers from the minister, well, we can't forget about it. We had to insist in the House. We didn't get all the answers to our questions. And when the minister was here, not even to talk about CURAM, but another bill, a question had to be asked by my colleague on the other side. And the minister said, well, 85,000 cases. Well, the cat is out of the bag. We had been asking the same question for a long time, it took a Liberal MP to ask a question to the minister for the minister to say 85,000 cases. So we finally had a number. But then in the House, we were being told, but it's not a big deal, 85,000 cases. Our Liberal colleagues were saying, well, they're calling us. Do you really want us to give you the 85,000 cases? Would you like each and every one of these people to start calling instead of saying a more general solution? You want them to call? 85,000 cases? It's not just a few. You can't just ask them to call you so that you will fix their issue. So we didn't see a real willingness to come up with an action plan, to look for a solution, to come up with a game plan, to come up with a contingency plan to deal with this number. Of course, it's going down. When we asked questions in the following months, it went from 85,000 to, I think, at one point it was 67,000. But then again, we spent a lot of energy trying to contain this whole thing rather than shedding light on what was really going on with Curam. Here at this committee, we were able to adopt a motion. I think at HUMA, we wanted to invite the ministers. We moved a motion. We wanted each of the ministers to be here with us for 2 hours. That was the motion. That got adopted. And what we ended up having was, instead of 2 hours per minister, we got 1 hour for the two ministers combined. That is not what I would call respecting a motion that was passed here at this committee. Once again, that is why I had to ask for documents and come up with a motion to ask for additional documents, because we are going from 2 hours per minister divided by 2, not even an hour per minister, 1 hour for the two ministers, so 1/4 the original time. So it's extremely frustrating. Despite the willingness of this committee, we didn't get what we asked for. That is why we are here at this point, at this committee, asking for additional documents. We have a motion to get more information. Now, if things have come to this point today, and I'd like to remind you that at the Public Accounts Committee, there was a unanimous motion, so even the Liberals had voted in favor, and it was a request by the Bloc Québécois to depoliticize all of this, to shed light, because now they're trying to blame us for playing political games. But an independent public inquiry was what we were asking for, so that we can remove ourselves from this, from the partisanship, and shed light onto what has happened. Because Liberals have tried time and again here at HUMA and at the Public Accounts Committee as well to block the provision of this information. And now, despite the fact that Liberals at the Public Accounts Committee voted in favor, we had a unanimous motion calling for an independent public inquiry. We asked for this in the House as well. When it was time to vote, all of the Liberals who had voted in favor at committee voted against, Mr. Chair. So when we talk about democracy, I think this is extremely worrying, not to know where their convictions lie, because they vote in favor at the committee, but in the House they vote against. I think it is violating the fundamental principles of democracy. Sébastien Lemire from Abitibi-Témiscamingue did great work at his committee for that motion to pass unanimously. He was very proud that it went all the way to the chamber. And during debate and after everything that's been said and all the concerns, well, it was the Speaker who had to decide, and the Speaker is a Liberal. And despite this unanimous motion from the Public Accounts Committee, it unfortunately did not pass in the chamber. Now, following this upset with the Liberals who voted against, although they had voted in favor at committee, I wanted to move a motion here at this committee to ask for additional documentation. And there were filibustering at the Public Accounts Committee. Now, the next day, I had to ask for information because it did not work at that committee. So, yes, we were obliged to do this. Had the Liberals cooperated at the Public Accounts Committee and answered the questions contained in the motion by my colleague, we wouldn't be here, because they could have done this. They could have requested documents, collected information, but that didn't happen, so we had to bring it here. And once again, filibustering. But there are real impacts on the elderly. I am also a member of the FIVO committee, and we were studying the situation of elderly women. And as recently as last week, when we're being told that no elderly are concerned about this and that it will be a waste of public resources and money to look into this, but we have 265% cost overrun, $5 billion more than what was initially set out. And other Liberal colleagues who have also accused me of wanting to waste money of citizens, but citizens have already lost money to the tune of $5 billion. So this money has already been wasted, has already been lost for about 9 months. This has been going on. They've been having issues receiving their payments. Now, when there are complex cases, of course, it can take longer, but 9 months starts to go beyond what is normal. And the elderly, some of them rely on OAS and other benefits, and they don't have anything else, and these are fixed incomes, which are already insufficient given the inflationary context we live in. And as we were able to observe in this other study at the FIWA committee I referred to, and the former chair of FADOC, now chairing an association of retirees of the civil service, was saying that there are significant impacts to these delays, especially the elderly who live on these fixed incomes, who rely only on these payments, not to be able to travel to some sun destinations, but to buy groceries and to cover basic needs. And the chair of this association was saying clearly that this is having significant impacts, and I think she even called this dramatic in some cases, Mr. Chair. We were talking about the situation of the elderly, and we ended up talking about Curam. And this is someone who represents the elderly. This is not a Bloc MP. This is not a Conservative MP. This is not a retired individual themselves who appeared before committee and said these things. So this has real impacts. We, as Bloc Québécois, we want to look into this. They're in a precarious situation, and it's unacceptable. And given the Curam system's difficulty or challenges, they are waiting for payments, and they're having to go to food banks. And there is an increase in the number of the elderly who are asking for food assistance, and they are facing the threat of homelessness as well. So they are worried, and they are having difficulty making ends meet with their fixed income. They're being put in extremely precarious financial situations. because they are having difficulty accessing getting these payments. So it's not wasting time. It's looking for more information, Mr. Chair, and I will stop with that because we are not the ones trying to filibuster here. We're trying to find solutions. And if you want to talk about democracy, well, maybe it's a discussion for another time. But what we asked for was legitimate in a democracy to ask for this kind of information. What's not legitimate is all the liberal initiatives that are anti-democratic. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Ms. LaRouche. Ms. Fancy.
Thank you very much.
Sorry,
through
Chair,
you,
just a point of order. This is not hopefully controversial, but I just looking at the time, and it seems like maybe we need to have some offline conversations. I wonder if there'd be a willingness of the committee to suspend at this point.
Ms. Fancy has the floor, but I will suspend for a moment.
I meant like for the night.
Moment to advise that we are suspending to the call of the chair. Suspend. We're done.